Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dennis Misigoy, Libertarian for the U.S. Senate here in the state of Florida, coming to you with another Thursday afternoon live stream. A little bit later than usual, but hey, the time is always bouncing around, so we do the best we can. We work with what we got, but here we are, and here I am to talk to you guys, as always, about either whatever you guys want to talk about or whatever other stuff might come up, whatever might be the most recent big issue or whatever it is that we need to discuss. Some of these are sort of the ever-present issues, such as the one we're experiencing. I'll take the easy one right now, which is inflation and its economic impact. Every single one of us feels it as we're going around. You got to buy gas or whatever, and you're feeling the pinch. Food prices, fuel prices, you name it, everything's impacted, and everybody's suffering. And so those who are kind of already familiar with sort of the libertarian take on this, and in particular mine, understands that so much of this has to do with bad monetary policy, how our money has been mismanaged by the Federal Reserve, the central bank, which controls basically the issuance of our currency and how large the money supply is. They've been incredibly irresponsible, particularly over the last couple of years, with the creation of additional money for the sake of dealing with COVID, for either providing relief to their preferred folks or for enabling out-of-control government spending. That's one that they've been doing for a very long time. It's this very nefarious give and take where, again, they create money to help government with their shortfall, where they don't have to openly increase taxes, but at the same time it is effectively the same thing because they are taxing your wealth. They're just not doing it directly in a way that you can see. Your bank account, if it had $1,000 before, it still has $1,000, but those $1,000 aren't worth the same thing that they were yesterday because of the creation of new money, and that's what we've been seeing happen. So now the $2.50, which bought you a tank of gas a year or so ago, or less, most likely, that same $2.50 now doesn't buy you a tank of gas, barely buys you, buys you half a tank of gas. Excuse me, not a tank. Oh, goodness gracious, a gallon. I'm sorry, that was terribly misspoken. Not even close to a tank. I don't think anybody's tank. That's half a gallon versus a gallon. So, but that's the situation we're dealing with now. And like I said, it has so much to do with having our money controlled by this by the central bank or any central authority, really, for that matter. What we come to realize is that nobody, no central authority, no government or the adjacent central banks can really be trusted with issuance of the money. History is replete with examples, and very, very few examples of where honest money was maintained by a central authority. The temptation always is there to manipulate the money supply, and certainly by the very design of the Federal Reserve, that's been what has existed before, and most modern central banks follow the same route. So how do we deal with it? That was a question actually I got when I was over at over in Orlando a little over a week ago, and taking a few questions after giving my initial kind of speech, discussion, whatever you want to call it. One of these questions was about how do we deal with that? And it's real simple, just like with on almost any other issue. What is the best way to deal with it? And in contrast to what you're going to get from the big party folks, which is more central control and more central planning, whether that means government's going to dictate what fuel supply or production is going to be, they're going to control the economy that way, or whether it is government that's going to come in and try to set prices, whatever that take is. Instead, the real solution, because none of those things are what's driving up prices to begin with. What's driving up prices is the instability of the currency and the debasement of the currency. So what do we have to do? We have to give people alternatives. We have to allow them to shift completely away from the centrally managed currency and try other things. The same way we can have a free market in any other set of goods and services, currency serves a function as an exchange of value. There's no reason why it needs to be centrally controlled by government. Obviously, having a single common one facilitates transactions to a certain degree, but at this day and age and with the technology we have, there's no reason that we cannot allow people and people as individuals and businesses to trade and use in whatever currency they wish. So we need to establish free markets. And I'm not talking about other governments' currencies or from other countries. I'm talking about other alternatives, significant alternatives such as cryptocurrencies or something backed by precious metals like gold and silver. Any of these other sort of alternatives, things that have traditionally existed, and certainly within the U.S., gold and silver is what's mentioned as legal tender in the Constitution. Cryptocurrency obviously is a much newer innovation, but it's something which, through technologies like the blockchain and so on, offer us an opportunity to have honest money, where even, again, and folks can debate the merits of it, but that's the beauty of freedom. The beauty of freedom is that if we simply open up the market and allow people to use whatever it is they want to use as an exchange of value, rather than the U.S. dollar Federal Reserve note, they're going to figure out what works. And whatever they tend towards will be the solution. And it may not even be one universal solution. It may be one thing for a certain kind of transactions and another for a different kind. But at the end of the day, we do need to recognize that this is the best solution, is offering people the freedom to choose how they're going to do business, how they're going to exchange value between different transactions when somebody sells, what they're going to use as that medium of exchange. And again, it doesn't need to be nailed down to one thing. People can, and we live in a day and age where the technology is there at our fingertips for us to be able to transfer between one and the other with relative ease. So why not take advantage of that? We really, what other alternative do we have? We cannot continue to stay on the roller coaster of the boom and bust cycle created by, Federal Reserve policy. The country's already in bad shape as far as inflation goes, and people are feeling the pinch economically. The natural thing for the Fed to do in response to kind of these issues is going to be to raise interest rates. That's going to have other downstream impacts in terms of how people are going to be using money and have other negative downstream impacts. And so what are we going to do? The only real escape hatch is freedom. And that's one of the things I'm committed to. And quite frankly, I'm the only U.S. Senate candidate you're going to find here in Florida who's committed on that issue. So it's one of those things where, again, I want to invite people to, consider that. And obviously, if money, which is one half of every transaction, has everything to do with how we allocate resources in our economy and how they're allocated in any economy, if you recognize the importance, please come help us out with a little bit of your own currency. As a matter of fact, recently just added the ability on our website to be able to donate using Bitcoin. So if you happen to be someone who's actually personally invested themselves in alternatives such as Bitcoin, you can, at least with that one in particular, go ahead and make a contribution to the campaign as well. Today being the last day of the quarter, so it'd be great to get a little bit more, but we got that up on the website. In addition, LP, the National Party, the National Libertarian Party, is going to be having a live stream event this Sunday featuring some other big Bitcoin heavyweights, discussion about the importance of this, and I think maybe some other alternative money solutions to the problem that we face of an unreliable currency, mismanagement by the Federal Reserve. And it's the opportunity, again, for us to reach out to what should be natural allies. So please spread the word and go check it out, be a part of that. And again, be willing to give us your support. Again, I really need it, as do many other candidates. But this is just one of the big challenges of our time. It is something that we need to and can no longer tolerate. That the way we have candidates such as Marco Rubio and Val Demings, who are pretty much just all in on supporting the Fed. I mean, that's what the establishment position is. They're going to support the Fed, and then they're going to deflect to other things as the cause. You see Marco Rubio out there tweeting about, for example, okay, Joe Biden can't lower gas prices because he's beholden to the environmental extremists who won't let them increase the supply of oil or production of oil, And again, I got no problem with removing any government restrictions on oil production within the U.S., but that isn't what's causing the inflation. Okay, that's not the reason why gas prices have like doubled. The reason is because of the loss of value in the dollar, and the dollar has lost its value because so many new dollars were created. And Congress wasn't just asleep at the wheel when it happened. They were cheering it on. They were supporting it. They were asking for it. They passed the CARES Act with no money to spend on it. Again, even if you believe that it's appropriate in those kind of extreme situations, like what was going on in the early days of COVID, that it really is that important for government to issue direct aid to people, okay, fine, but let's figure out how to pay for it. You have to cut spending somewhere, and there should be plenty of places we can cut spending. We don't need to be sending, for example, earlier this year already, it's been, I guess in total, around $54 billion to Ukraine. Now, you might say, well, that's really important, and we need to be involved there. I think a better way for us to be involved, if we were going to be involved in the Ukraine conflict, would be to mediate a peaceful resolution. We've done the exact opposite of that because, as some folks, such as Marco Rubio and Hillary Clinton, have openly called for and expressed their support for basically running a proxy war, funding an insurgency to do as much harm as we could to the Russians. Who cares how much the Ukrainians suffer? Who cares how much Ukraine is destroyed? What we care about is bleeding the Russians, and who cares how much the American people have to pay for it? It's not Marco Rubio paying for it. It's not Hillary Clinton or anybody of the foreign policy establishment paying for it. It's you and me, the productive citizens of this country, paying taxes so that we can send it overseas to another country to perpetuate and extend and escalate a foreign conflict that doesn't need to be happening, that could have been resolved. Would there have to have been concessions? Of course. But now the situation's only gotten worse, and it's only going to continue to get worse because nobody's invested. Nobody's really committed to trying to make the situation better. Not the Russians, not the Ukrainian leadership, who is, again, being heavily influenced by the U.S. and other folks in the West to kind of press on and not make peace. They've, it's interesting how the conflict is so often cast as this struggle for a, fledgling democracy against this authoritarian behemoth invader. But at the same time, you've got Ukraine outlawing all these opposition political parties. It's clear that there's not unanimity there. And it's clear that there's other forces within the country who would like to negotiate and would have liked to seen a different resolution to this rather than what we're seeing. But instead, we have an ongoing conflict that doesn't need to be happening. But and certain people are within our establishment really happy about it, and they're really happy to just continue the way it's going. They want it to continue. They want to bleed Russia as much as they can, even if they're bleeding America as well of its treasure, and bleeding the Ukrainians. Clearly, it's their country being destroyed and their people mostly being killed. So, but those folks don't care about that. That's not a priority for them. Their priorities are other things. So, making sure that we can sell all the arms and getting all these sort of things going. But there's no moral excuse for it, no justification. This is just wrong, and it's the kind of thing we need to stop. But it's not going to stop as long as we have the establishment parties in power, as long as we have the establishment party candidates making all the decisions, getting elected. That's why it's so important for us to have an alternative. That's what I'm doing over here. We've qualified for the ballot in November. Now we just need the opportunity to reach more people. We need to raise some money to do a little bit more of this. We've got some events we're going to go out to in the coming weeks and months. Some things being finalized. I'm going to be out in Brevard on July 4th for the parade in downtown Melbourne. For anybody who wants to come out and chat it up there, if you're going to be in the area. Let's see. Like I said, there'll be more events coming up, but there's some of these events we've got registration fees and things of that nature to be able to take part in fully. So we need to raise some money, man. This is part of what's so important. Raising at least a couple thousand just to be able to get our setup and to be able to get out to a lot of these events. There's quite a few, like I said, coming up already right now in the summer. We also need to try to be able to reach people directly. We need to get signs out there to folks. So we need your help. I need your help to be able to spread this message. If you believe that this message is important, the message of sound money, of peace, and of individual liberty, then it's incumbent on you. If it's not you, who's gonna throw their support behind this? It's got to be the folks who recognize how important this is, the folks who recognize the need for this and the need for this message to be heard everywhere. So that's what I'm trying to do my part for, to make sure that that is heard. Let's see. Where do we go next? Let me see, man. We don't have much in the way of comments. I know now's a little bit of awkward time. I'm sure a lot of people wrapping up with work this afternoon, getting ready to head out. Yeah, I'll go with one. Again, going back to our incumbent. Again, indicative of the difference between him as the establishment Republican and myself, and sort of the commitment to, among other things, small government, real free markets, and against socialist sort of central economic planning, redistribution of wealth. What is the Marco Rubio response to the recent ruling against abortion, overturning Roe v. Wade? It is, hey, let's do exactly what Democrats are saying. It says if you're going to be pro-life, then you have to, put out all these programs that are going to fund everyone. Now, that's certainly debatable, because I don't know that necessarily government programs are the best way to help people in those kind of situations. At risk young mothers who are, going through difficult circumstances trying to raise kids. I do think that there needs to be more support. But again, the question number one is whether that's a role for a government, because one thing that is not a question is the fact of whether or not it's a role for the federal government. All you have to do, and you don't have to be a libertarian for this, just look at the Constitution. The Constitution does not authorize the federal government to be involved in people's lives in this way, or to fund welfare programs of this nature, to do any of this sort of thing. So at a bare minimum, if you swear to uphold the U.S. Constitution, you swear to defend the U.S. Constitution, and then you start promoting, you start trying to sell programs like this, or promote or push for programs like this, it's clear that you're not sticking to that oath. You're not honoring that oath. I intend to honor that oath, to uphold the Constitution, and you will never, I can guarantee you, ever see me pushing for legislation to expand government services or expand government's activities in any way, or spending, however you want to frame it, programs, policies, you name it, that is going to violate the U.S. Constitution. I want to roll back everything that is already violating it. That includes a myriad of things. As a recent discussion I was having with somebody, the Department of Education, the federal government is not constitutionally authorized to be involved at all in education. It was not for most of the U.S.'s history. Since it has become involved, education in this country has only suffered. And as a former educator myself, I spent enough time in the classroom. I was a high school teacher for 4 years. I recognize that nobody in Washington, D.C. or any sort of faraway place is going to really have better insight into what's going on with the kids in those classrooms and what they need, or the subject matter to be teaching them. So it's another one of these examples where, again, the federal government's involved in something, and who's got the courage? Who among U.S. Senate candidates has the courage to say, this isn't constitutional and we need to stop? I'm willing to. None of them are. And that's the difference. And that's one of many other issues. And the question of not just getting rid of stuff that's unconstitutional, but also holding people in the government accountable for misconduct. Another recent discussion I had, a separate one from some of these, had to do with the, in particular, the sort of habit, and we've seen a little bit of this in relation to the January 6th proceedings, not within those proceedings itself, but sort of reference when we talk about the specter of Ray Epps and a lot of other likely federal agents who were involved in sort of instigating the events of that day. That's not a new thing for us to see, though. Similarly, what we've seen in particular since the war on terror officially after 9/11 has been similar sort of targeting with Muslim communities, where in particular you have federal agents targeting impressionable, usually impressionable youth, vulnerable people that they can influence, going in, radicalizing them, getting them involved in some kind of plot, and then arresting those people and destroying their lives, really, in order to inflate their counterterrorism arrest numbers and to make it look like they're doing all this great stuff and foiling these great plots. We saw something similar to that also with the Gretchen Wilson kidnapping, where most of the people who were involved in a serious way and really pushed for the whole plot were all agents. We're all government agents trying to entrap other people. And that's something that really cannot be allowed to continue. On an individual level, it probably should. That's the sort of thing that really should start to face criminal penalties, really, I would say. And if nothing else, we need to really be willing to consider the option, I would even say, of abolishing the FBI. It has a terrible track record from its very beginning, going back to the days of J. Edgar Hoover, of blackmailing and illegal surveillance for the purpose of blackmailing folks. In particular, some of our very notable civil rights leaders. It's interesting because of how our perception has changed. That today, in modern times, we have like a Martin Luther King holiday, and yet during his actual lifetime, he was targeted by federal agencies in this way, doing really, really vile sort of stuff, trying to look for a way to really go after him. And it's these same agencies that have continued on to today. Their character really hasn't changed. They never really cleaned house and restored, or I shouldn't say restored, because they never had a great character. They never were really upstanding and good. Maybe they created that perception through media and by the fact that, again, people in power had to fall in line and present them that way because they always had dirt on them, because that was part of what they did. But we need to really reevaluate if that's stuff that we really want to continue with those agencies, with those legacies. Maybe there's still a role for federal law enforcement, but in this particular case, it's something where we have so many examples of misconduct that we really need to be willing to say. And similar with other agencies such as the Department of Homeland Security, which by extension we're talking about stuff like ICE and TSA, some of these agencies that have been sort of born out of the worst of circumstances, these panics, and have demonstrated the worst of tendencies over the years. If they've been rotten to the core since the lights were first turned on, we've got to be willing to have the courage again to just pull the plug and say, we don't need to continue with this. And again, if not now, when we're $30 trillion in debt, over 8% inflation, then when? I say now is the time, and that's why I'm running now. So we can't do it if we don't have people there willing to do it. Again, the process is long. Change does not come quickly. But how's it ever going to start? I tell you, it's not going to start with Marco Rubio. It's not going to start with Val Demings. And realistically, it's not going to start with any of the other Democrats. It's not going to start with any of the NPAs or write-ins, because it's a one-off. This is a big, monumental task, and it's not going to be completed by any one person. There needs to be a movement. There needs to be an alternative that's organized, and that's what we have with the Libertarian Party. But we still need more support, and we still need a little more resources to be able to reach more of the people in this state, to recognize, to help them not just hear this message, but to recognize the urgency of this moment. And the fact that we do not need to sit back and be afraid of, maybe this other person who's slightly more bad, I think, will get elected. We can't allow ourselves to be led by fear. We have to be willing to lead and take action. And that takes a bit of courage, but that has to come easily with the recognition of everything that's at stake. We are on this sort of slow burn towards disaster, and I think there are ways out. I'm a pretty positive guy. I'm hopeful. unlike a lot of other folks I know who kind of share some of my views and maybe travel in a bit of similar circles who don't really see a realistic way out, I tend to be somebody who thinks that there is an opportunity for us to reject the status quo and really see real change. But it only happens if we choose to make it happen, and we can. We can if we're willing to reject those status quo candidates, those status quo parties, and embrace something different. And that's what I'm trying to offer. Not just something different, but something principled, something well-reasoned, and something that puts the individual's understanding, your knowledge, your ability to make decisions for yourself, puts that above government power, puts that ahead of the the brain trust in whether it's Washington, Tallahassee, or wherever, to make decisions for you. As long as you're respecting other people's rights, those basic rights, life, liberty, property, you should be free, and that is what is going to allow us to achieve the greatest prosperity. And when I say free, I mean in all aspects. And certainly, as I was mentioning earlier, right at the top of all this was, monetary freedom, the freedom to use whatever it is you want as the means of exchange, as a means of exchanging value for one product or another, so that you can have that go-between, so we can have a functioning economy that is not constantly being undermined by a central bank printing money to facilitate the schemes of big government or whatever other nefarious purposes, because there's been plenty over the many, many years. And that's why our dollar has suffered the way it is. You look at what has happened to the value of the dollar since the inception of the Federal Reserve. It is, what can you say, really? It's been a disaster, and it's even more of a disaster right now in the last few years, because we're really feeling it. And, and it doesn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be this way, and it doesn't have to stay this way. But the only way it changes is if we change things. So I'm calling on people to help things change. I'm on the ballot, but that'll only take me so far. We need to not just be on the ballot, we need to be known. We need to reach people. And so I'm here trying to reach you guys, spread the word, let the message be heard. Go visit the website, Misigoy, Misigoy.com. Hit the donate button up there. If you want to donate Bitcoin, there's a link at the top of that page. So go click here and it'll take you to another form. But we need your support. That's the only way we get through this. That's the only way we get ahead. That's the only way we can reach more people outside of our normal bubble. We got to spread the word, and we got to be in more places. And so I'm going to try to do my best to do that for you guys, and for the sake of what we're all here concerned about. So there's it's not all pre-planned, it's not all pre-scripted. This is me off the cuff. That's why I get these odd pauses, because this is the reality. This is not a canned, rehearsed career politician. This is a regular guy who's concerned about the same things, doing my best, putting to work what little experience I have as a public official, as an elected official, to now try to serve us in this really critical moment and offer a real alternative to what is really evil in this sense. When you talk about the harm that's being done, I've talked about it targeted in certain places. We talk about it in the broad sense where everybody is suffering under this inflation. In all of these ways, it doesn't need to be. Let's not let it be any longer. Thank you guys for joining me. As I mentioned, I plan to be at the July 4th parade in Melbourne. This July 4th in the morning. I need to post some more details. Look for it on the website or on social media. And I'm going to wrap it up there. We're at about time. So thank you guys for joining me. If you haven't already, go to the website and support us, man. We need the help, and let's help spread this message. Thank you.